More often than not, when we go about setting targets about anything in life, we plan it, we execute it so that we achieve it. Same goes for the investments. I'll save as much as possible often veers towards as little as I can get away with. And that happens because we do not have a goal. How important is the goal is what we will discuss in today's Investors Hangout, brought to you by Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund and Value Research. With me is Dhirendra Kumar, CEO of Value Research. Welcome, Dhirendra.
Thank you.
It is said that setting goals is the first step in turning the invisible into visible. How true is it? Isn't that too daunting a task?
No, it is true for any task, not only financial things. But financial thing is, the saving for future, the postponed consumption. This is daunting because you are simply compromising on today's consumption for a future need, which you need to think about. So this, this 4 bucket system, I would say it's actually, 4 or 5 bucket system. Of course, 4 are about investments, or rather 3. I'll get on to specifics, otherwise I'll actually be confusing my our viewers. But this is actually setting a framework for how to go about investing. Because of course it is daunting because you are postponing your consumption, and today you have plenty of consumption avenue. You have to spending avenue. Not only that, this is how personal finance works. It is so against your psyche because when investing for the long run, your investments to compound, it needs to be invested for the long term. And when you are investing in early stages, you have very little saving. Then, because investment follows savings. And so you are unable to form the habit of saving and putting it to work by way of investments. So when you don't have anything, so you can't really visualize the magical impact of the small saving being put to work and how it compounds. The experiencing compounding, just getting the theoretical understanding in your class 10th or 9th in commercial mathematics that this is the compound formula, this is the way to, how anything compounds, that doesn't work. You have to really experience it. You have to experience it with your own money and see how it works, and that takes time. And when it happens with small savings, you really don't believe in it. But that is the only thing, that is the only magic which works with individuals. They need to really get organized about it and getting a mental framework that how to approach it. Because many a times, everybody starts with that he wants to invest 3,000 rupees. And everybody wants to have maximum return in the shortest possible tenure. That is not a very organized framework. I think the starting point should be that how much money you are able to save, how much money you are likely to need in many years. So, having a method of allocating your money in the right way is crucial.
Okay. One should not procrastinate about things.
Yeah.
One should not think, okay, as I said in my opening part, okay, as much as possible I'll try and save, and jo bhi kuch bachta hai, at the end of it you say, okay, that I will save.
Yeah.
So that's not the way to go about it. So what is the way to go about it? You mentioned 5 buckets. So what are these buckets? Let's get into
actually,
to simplify things. Huh?
Yeah, one can say that it's 3, 4 or 5, but I'll just explain why this confusion and why it is actually not a confusion.
Okay.
One is that the money that you are likely to need in many years, that should be your starting point. The money, and you must invest a small part. You should start with your investment, not with your savings, because if you think in terms of first spending and consuming the money, you will not be left with anything. That is how money is. There are always more wants than you have it. So start with something, 5%, 10%, the money which is needed for and think in terms of really long term, in terms of 5 years and more, or 20 years, 30 years, depending on planning for your retirement, saving for your retirement, and if you are going to live for 30 years, assuming that you have it is not granulated yet, still allocate a part of that money so that you don't really lay your hands on that money for your child's education 5, 7, 10 years away from now, putting a down payment for your house which is 5, 7, 10 years. Then next comes the money which you are likely to need in 2, 3, 4 years. that is a medium term. So, choose an appropriate vehicle, and the money which you are likely to consume and the money which you are likely to need in very near future. 3 months, 6 months, or within a year's time, you need to spend that money. That money should be lying there. That money should be lying in a very low risk avenue. So allocating this. Then the fourth and the fifth bucket, about which I was a little tentative and about, that is you need to tax save is money earned. So you should be investing as much money which can actually save you tax. So that money, which is actually part of the first one, that the long term money of that, invest up to 1.5 lakh rupee, and if it is getting exhausted with your provident fund or PPF or something, then think of it as a long term avenue. I would say that is the fourth bucket, which is part of the first bucket itself. And before you get on to all this, cover your ground with insurance, health insurance and life insurance, the one which you need. And if you can't afford it, have the essential ones. If you can't really afford a term insurance right now, go for the accidental insurance. It's a very low premium, gives you adequate coverage. Right. So, and for 500 rupee, 1000 rupee, you can get that accident cover. If you really can't get the health insurance cover, look for your employer or get for, there are many relatively cheaper options which will provide you some offer. They are not, and so getting adequate, at least minimum or some health cover, because all your investment plans will get derailed in case of a bad health, which requires hospitalization or a big expense. And of course, there is no substitute for term insurance, because while you're accumulating your savings, your family is completely uncovered, because it'll take time for you to build your financial assets so that it can take care of things. So that, I think, I would say that's the first bucket. Be conscious about it. Even if you can't afford it, think of cheaper alternatives to get that even a limited coverage.
So the first bucket is the immediate needs and emergency funds.
Yes. Second is the medium term.
So I can call them safely the term buckets, the time buckets.
The time buckets. The time buckets.
Okay. The third bucket you mentioned about which are further away, like 7
5 years and more, long-term goals, and allocating that money.
Okay.
Within that is the tax-saving one. It shouldn't be considered, because avail the tax-saving entitlement investment as much as possible, and then before all this, have the foundation of the insurance if you have financial dependence.
So where are you putting that, in the fifth bucket? Or?
I would say that is actually preparing the ground.
Okay.
That comes first, and make sure that you don't end up with anything which is a mix of all these things. Make sure that you are getting a simple health insurance and a simple term cover.
Yeah. And the fourth bucket, as Dhiren said, is about tax saving investments. So
yes.
We covered.
Yeah, you covered. So.
What about, okay, I've done all these buckets, I've planned about them, I've set goals according to these buckets. What's the next step?
The next step is that, once you have earmarked, depends on, how much money you are left with to begin with to invest, and you have been able to earmark, then choose the appropriate vehicle. Your money which is needed for the immediate consumption, and if that time frame is a month or 40 days or 50 days or maybe through the month, consumption and immediate needs, that should be in a liquid fund or your savings bank account. Don't try and maximize your return there, because if you try and maximize it, if you get greedy about this, optimizing return on that, you may not have the money when you need it for this short term. So that money should be handy and should yield about anywhere between 6 to 7%. This is not this should not be a large amount if it is meant for a regular consumption. The medium term, consider a short-term bond fund or ultra short-term bond fund. Be very conservative about it, because you definitely want that money when you want it to be there, even in the medium term, 2, 3 years, 4 years. At most, if it is for a negotiable goal, something which you can do with 3 years, you can well do it within 2 years. Something like buying or upgrading your car. If you are putting your money towards that, we talked about reverse EMI a few weeks back.
Yes.
So that kind of money, then consider, you can assume little risk there too. Consider a MIP or an equity income fund, because you are chasing a goal which, if you get it in 2 years, is fine. If you get it in 3.5 years, is still fine. But if it is going to be a non-negotiable goal, if you are actually putting that money for the tuition fee of the first year when your child is getting admission, don't do that. Do it in a short-term debt fund. It will be predictable. You will not get any negative surprise. Long-term money, there are two ways of going about it. If it is the tax-saving bit only, if you can invest, save and invest no more than 1.5 lakh rupee, just choose a tax-saving fund and be at it. That will take care of your essentials. That will take care of your retirement. If you keep doing it for year after year for 15-20 years, you will be taken care of reasonably well. The power of compounding and all equity investment and lock in for 3 years, which enforces discipline for investors, works magically. Because the biggest problem is when we invest in equity, when you see the value decline in a brief period of time, and you have the option of taking your money out, then you panic and you are never able to maximize your return, or you are unable to stay on course. So tax saving fund is a great way of staying on course. It forces you to be there, and then you end up, and that's the way you end up that being a very profitable investment. Else, first time investor with all kind of liquidity available, you can take your money out. Always start with a balanced fund. If you have experienced the market for 2-3 years with a balanced fund or anything else and gotten used to it, then go for a multi-cap fund, and don't think of any fifth option. So liquid fund for your very short-term needs, short-term debt fund or equity income fund for medium-term needs, and for long-term needs, either a tax-saving fund or a balanced fund for a starter or a multi-cap fund. So these 5 kind of funds can actually take care of most individuals' needs.
Okay, and how much should it be in terms of percentage? Say for emergency, it's...
No, you have, that the investor has to decide, because it entirely depends.
Is it a ballpark figure?
No.
Or in terms of 5 months of your monthly expenditure should be in...
That is the emergency formula, but I would say that that also varies. I would say that if you're in a government job, you don't have to worry about the job. In fact, the charm of government job is that once you get it, nobody can get rid of you. So that's one, I would say that your need for emergency or the kind of support system. So it depends. It's entirely circumstantial. If you have old parents, then maybe you need higher liquidity. If you have young kids, young children, you need even more money for emergency. So you anticipate that. But I would say that 2-3 months of consumption needs or 6 months of your monthly expenses should be good enough.
Okay. So 5 buckets. We feel that you always do your best. What you plant today is going to harvest tomorrow. And this is what Dhirendra is saying: plan and invest and look at the future. Then we go on to the Q&A now, and Ion has written to us saying, I have an FD of rupees 12 yielding 6.6% interest. Please suggest mutual fund options to get better returns.
I would say that depends on his how conversant he is with things. I would say that right substitute, which will be a little more tax efficient if he is holding for 3 years and more, which generally will be the case for a bond, for a FD, is that short-term bond fund will give him a reasonable return like a FD, maybe a little more.
Okay.
The real advantage will be that if you hold it for 3 years, all your gains will not be treated as income. It will be treated as capital gains, and it will be indexed. So it will, if your 10 rupee becomes 13 rupees in 3 years' time, then 13 rupee minus inflation will be your gains, and on that gain you have to pay only 20% of the gains. Post inflation, adjusted gains will be taxed at 20%. That is the treatment. So that concessional tax treatment of the bond fund return is your advantage. And there's another advantage of fixed income funds as compared to deposits. Of course, we haven't had a scare of that kind, that you are able to it has higher liquidity. If you take your money out, there is no penalization. Of course, the tax efficiency goes if you redeem your money within 3 years, it will be treated, all the gains that has accumulated on your bond fund realized within 3 years, that will be treated as your income of that year. So, but that is the case of interest income. That is how interest income from a fixed deposit is treated always. And there is no TDS on mutual fund, whereas there is a tax deduction, withholding tax on the interest that you earn. Every year the bank is supposed to deduct the TDS and deposit. So short-term debt fund is a more predictable substitute. If you're looking to optimize return, then I would say that MIP is the growth option, which can invest 15 to 20% into equity, or the equity income funds. They can invest 25 to 30%, 35% into equity. Their tax efficiency has gone, because earlier when equity was completely tax free, but it's still concessional, because all the returns from those funds will be, if held for over 1 year, will be taxed at 10% as compared to your marginal tax rate.
Okay, moving on, Balaji has written to us saying that for getting regular monthly income, can we invest 50% in debt, 30% in large cap, and 20% in mid cap, and then use systematic withdrawal plan? Else, is there a better option?
Yes, there is a better option, because try and keep it simple. Of course, this allocation is conservative, 50% equity and 50% fixed income. And 50% equity, which is reasonably diversified, large cap and mid cap. But if you keep it simple in terms of having a single fund, or investing in a fund from which you mount a withdrawal plan, you have to make sure you can do it with a balanced fund with ease, which will be 70% equity, 70%. Or there are funds which are 50% equity, 50% debt, and you have to make only one investment or make two investments like that. It will be less paperwork. The advantage of withdrawal plan is that initial years you are taking, when you take your money out in the form of redemption of units, a good part comes back to you, even though all your money will be growing, but it is treated as redemption of units. So only that part which you are redeeming, you will be taking a part of your gains, and so the tax incidence is very low, because it is considered as taking your own money back from a taxation point of view. So doing a withdrawal plan is very tax efficient. Keeping it simple is very important, otherwise you will have to do the rebalancing yourself over time. Many times equity will do well and debt will not, and you will be doing a withdrawal plan from all of them equally, and then when the reverse happens, then you will be taking a part of the, you are doing a withdrawal from equity while it is not doing well. So having a unified, diversified vehicle at the outset will be useful. And the critical thing is not this. The critical thing is that what is your withdrawal rate? If you take 10% out, if you withdraw 10%, you run the risk of eating your capital, consuming your capital. Make sure that we have talked about it. What should be the withdrawal rate? I think a conservative withdrawal rate from a portfolio like this, 50% equity, 50% debt, should not exceed 5%. That is the only way to ensure that you don't consume your capital. Also ensure that over a period of time there will be appreciation left in your investments, which will make sure that you can increase your withdrawal over time. So whatever be your money, don't withdraw more than 5-6% to begin with, and every year, depending on the value of your residual investment, you can revise it periodically.
And continue to withdraw 5%?
Continue to withdraw 5%, but if you are actually putting 1 crore of rupees, and if you take out 5 lakh rupees this year, and after withdrawing 5 lakh rupees, the worth of your investment becomes 1 crore 10 lakh rupees. So next year you can actually make it 6 lakh rupees. So your ability to increase your periodic income, increase your withdrawal, because that will be the need. The need will be to be able to increase your income with time adjusted for inflation. So this is the only way. If you do not have equity, if you create an all fixed income portfolio, which many people think they should do in retirement, you run the risk of outliving your savings, which is a big risk.
Okay, the next question is from D. Ghosh, and seems they've been listening to our program quite regularly. You often refer to equity income funds, but he wants to know what is the difference between an equity income fund and an equity fund. Is there a difference?
Yeah, there is a big difference.
And how do I know? He needs to know. How do I know it's an equity income fund?
Of course, these funds will get better formalized after the SEBI classification comes into place. But when we refer to equity fund, the equity funds are classified as large cap, multi cap, mid cap, small cap, tax saving fund. These equity funds are classified in the hybrid category. They are actually hybrid fund. These funds have 33% into equity. They are almost like this is somewhat like a balanced fund. They get slotted in the hybrid category, or as we classify on our website. 1/3 of the money is in equity, 1/3 of the money is in fixed income, and 1/3 of the money is in equity derivatives. It is in futures. So the tax treatment of these funds is like that of equity, but the character of this fund is like 2/3 is fixed income and 1/3 is equity. So they are very conservative equity fund. They are conservative allocation fund. They are meant for investors who are not willing, because when you look at the balance fund, those funds are nearly 2/3 or maybe 3/4 into equity. They are almost like an equity fund. These are almost like a fixed income fund, but the nature, the tax configuration of these funds is such that it is treated as equity fund. So these are equity income funds. They are more conservative. They are not like equity fund, which is 100% invested in equity.
Okay. धनराज writes, इंडिया में म्यूचुअल फंड्स पर ही ज़्यादा फोकस क्यों है, जबकि इंडेक्स फंड्स ज़्यादा और श्योर रिटर्न्स देते हैं? Should I translate?
नहीं, this is fine. इंडिया में म्यूचुअल फंड्स ज़्यादा पॉपुलर इसलिए हैं क्योंकि इंडेक्स फंड्स का जो रिटर्न है वो 3 साल, 5 साल, 10 साल, 15 साल की अवधि में इंडेक्स फंड से ज़्यादा बेहतर जो एक्टिवली मैनेज म्यूचुअल फंड है उनका प्रदर्शन रहा है. किसी भी फंड को अगर आप देखें जिसका कि 5 साल से ज़्यादा का ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड है, वो बहुत आसानी से इंडेक्स से ज़्यादा रिटर्न दे पाते हैं. तो भविष्य में ऐसा हो सकता है कि इंडेक्स फंड का प्रदर्शन बेहतर हो, लेकिन अभी जो स्थिति है कि 80-90% फंड 3 साल से ज़्यादा अवधि पे ज़्यादा समय में इंडेक्स को बहुत आसानी से बीट कर पाते हैं, और इस वजह से इंडेक्स फंड भारत में पॉपुलर नहीं हो पाए हैं. केवल डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज़ में अगर हम देखें जहाँ पे बाज़ार काफ़ी इफ़िशिएंट है, और मुझे लगता है कि भारत में बहुत आसानी से इंडेक्स फंड्स पॉपुलर नहीं होंगे. कुछ इंडेक्स फंड हाल फिलहाल बड़े हुए हैं, उसका कारण कुछ और है. इसलिए नहीं कि इंडेक्स फंड अच्छा कर रहे हैं, इसलिए क्योंकि प्रोविडेंट फंड का EPFO का पैसा उसमें जा रहा है. EPFO में शायद उनको आसान तरीका लगता है इक्विटी में पार्टिसिपेट करने के लिए इंडेक्स फंड में लगाना. लेकिन इंडेक्स, अगर आप इक्विटी से बेहतर रिटर्न चाहते हैं तो इंडेक्स फंड में पैसा लगाना बेहतरीन ज़रिया नहीं है. उसका मुझे लगता है ढेर सारे कारण हैं. कभी किसी अन्य कार्यक्रम में हम लोग इस पे विस्तार से चर्चा करेंगे कि भारत में इंडेक्स फंड अच्छा क्यों नहीं करते हैं.
बट सिंपली पुट, अगर रिटर्न्स कहाँ से बेटर आ रहे हैं तो वहीं जाना चाहिए, व्हिच इज म्यूचुअल फंड्स.
बिल्कुल. एक फंड मैनेजर का बहुत एक्टिव रोल है. एक फंड मैनेजर ये चुनाव करता है कि किस में वो निवेश करे, क्योंकि फंड मैनेजर के पास बहुत मामूली विकल्प है कि अगर वो कुछ चीज़ को अवॉइड करता है और किसी चीज़ में ज़्यादा पैसा लगाता है, यही उसके पास औजार है ज़्यादा रिटर्न देने का. और मुझे लगता है कि भारत में ये कर पाना काफ़ी आसान रहा है म्यूचुअल फंड मैनेजर्स के लिए.
ओके. Next question is from Rupesh, and he says, I want to accumulate 10 lakhs in the next 3 years for initial payment for buying a home. Will it be okay if he invests 25,000 rupees per month and then achieve this?
Yes, he will be getting very close to that with his own capital. In fact, if he needs 10 lakh rupees and he's investing 3 lakh rupees in a year's time, then he can choose a very conservative vehicle. But I would say that it is good to assume little risk, maybe consider an equity income fund. You can, because this is not a very rigid goal. If you can actually get that money early in 2.5 years time, which is good. If it takes little longer, that's also not going to disrupt your plans. So 2 to 4 years time frame, possible that you get it in 2. And if you can do it in 4 years time, and if you are able to put a larger down payment, then why not? Because in next 3 years, if you're going to 25,000 rupees a month is 3 lakh rupees annual investment. 3 years it will be 9 lakh. Even a bank recurring deposit will actually turn that money. If you invest in an equity income fund or a balance fund, or even a post office, the MIP, the monthly income plan of a mutual fund, the growth option, I'm hopeful that it will be able to beat fixed income return, which will be about 7-8% at least. Generating 20-25% more return. You will have a much larger down payment in 3 to 4 years time. The only downside is that once value gets started, sometimes you will see a little more volatility, but it's not extreme volatility. Only 10 to 15 or 20% of your money will be in equity, and because you will be averaging it over the next 3 years, your risk gets marginalized substantially.
Next is Gagan. He says, I'm investing for a goal which is 15 years away. I think this is the fourth
Yep.
bucket. Okay. But when 10 years have passed and the goal is only 4 to 5 years away, how should I de-risk the money?
Depends what the goal is. If it is going to be a retirement, then maybe the way to de-risk is 2 years of annual expenses should be put in fixed income.
Okay.
So or you have invested money, and maybe do it in a tranche of every year. So 3 years before, take 1 year's annual income requirement and put that in fixed income, and keep doing it every year. As and when, so you will be ahead of time. You will be 2-3 years ahead of time. So you will not be dependent on the market to realize the money,
Okay.
which may be to your disadvantage. And when you have 2-3 years of time frame in hand, then you can keep doing it periodically whenever you find comfortable. It amounts to a little bit of timing, but it's not perfect timing. Whenever you think that you have enough money and take your money out, maybe a year, 2 years before that. This is a simple de-risking. The other way of de-risking is that, and if it is for any other goal, then maybe plan it a little more methodically. Child's education, first year's tuition fee, have it in fixed income a year before you need it. Second year's tuition fee, again a year before. So you don't necessarily need to take the money out whenever you are likely to need it. The way you accumulate gradually, it is important that you deaccumulate, you realize it gradually, because averaging helps there too. And the reason why we always suggest, I keep recommending that move your money gradually, even if you have lump sum money, that is to eliminate the possibility of catching a market peak.
Okay.
Likewise, don't wait for the last minute, because if that happens to be a market trough, avoiding that is important. So once you are bringing some kind of averaging mechanism to your investment as well as withdrawal.
Do you need a planner for all this, or a person can do it Gagan can do it on his own, in the sense, okay, 2 years he's seeking your advice, surely, but 2 years before he should take out money. I mean, what goes into it?
Some plain arithmetic and common sense. So you can do it on a
goal.
And goal, of course. And there can't be of course, if you have a planner handy, and if you have a very complex thing, and if you have built a legacy, then maybe a planner will help. But financial planning is all about common sense, and I think there is nobody more interested, nobody who has more skin in the business, nobody who has greater interest in your well-being than yourself.
You yourself. Well said. G.N. Bhatia has written, for a long-term horizon of 20 years or more, is a multi-cap fund better or a small-cap fund?
There are different ways of looking at it. Multi-cap gets you greater diversification. They don't crumble. Small caps are, they're very volatile asset class. Small caps tend to be far more rewarding on a 10, 15, 20 year period, 5, 10, 15 year period. Okay. But they can also be, very unnerving. When markets go down, small caps fall 5%, while a multi-cap will fall, 3%. So you have to really find I would say that if you're not relatively new to the markets, new to market-linked investment, start with a balanced fund, which is even more, it is multi-asset, stable. If you have been in the market, move to multi-cap. If you have understood, and if you are fine with the ups and downs of the small caps, by all means invest in small caps. They will definitely prove to be far more rewarding. The small cap funds also, present a very compelling case. They are much better investment vehicle than investing in small cap stocks directly yourselves. It is there is a quality filter applied. The universe of small cap stocks will be about 2,500 listed in the market, but the mutual fund managers invest in only about 500 of them. So the rest of them, the elimination itself is a great value add. The liquidity of the small caps, many a times, of course, individual investors may not have that disadvantage, but in a bad market, small caps become illiquid, but your mutual funds remain liquid all the time. Whenever you need the money, you can take your money out by putting a request before 3 o'clock. But I would say that if you're a regular investor, believer in equity, can withstand ups and downs, small caps are a good option, but it's not for everyone.
Okay. Again, your need, your goal defines
your
everything.
tolerance.
Your
Because
tolerance, yeah.
experiencing the tolerance is very different from just getting an academic reference. If you tell somebody in a rising market that if you lose 20% of your money, how comfortable you will be, he'll say, I'll be fine. But when you are faced with a situation of losing 20%, your 100 rupee becoming 80 rupee after the gain, you are not as comfortable. So saying is different. Investors' thinking is malleable. It changes with time. And 20% money which could have been realized and kept in your pocket can't be realized today, at least notionally, is not a very comfortable feeling.
So the secret of getting ahead is getting started. That's all we have in today's Investor Hangout. Make sure that you follow the advice that Dhirendra has given to you and continue to plan and continue to invest. Till we meet next time, it's goodbye from all of us.